Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Today's episode is part of a special mini-series brought to you from the Airport Fire Officers Association annual conference. Now, aviation firefighting is an area, total honestly, we haven't explored as much as I really wanted to, and as much as we definitely should on the podcast. And that's going to change with this series, because this year I was fortunate enough to be invited to attend the conference of Airport Fire Officers Association by their chair, Wayne Weaver, who served on the committee since 2019. It's a genuine privilege to be part of this. Really enjoyed being there. I got to spend time with professionals operating at really high levels within the aviation fire and rescue environment, learning so much. So across this series, we're going to be bringing you some recordings live at the conference and some conversations happening backstage, capturing the people, the ideas, and the experiences shaping the sector right now. And this is not just CPD for the hell of it, even though it is all to do with the Institute of Fire Engineers as well. The conference is formally recognised with structured learning. So you can get Institute of Fire Engineers accreditation for this. And it's going to be about learning from real incidents. It's going to be about shared operational insights, some leadership stuff, challenging the thinking through actual lived experiences, actual lived careers. And over the course of these episodes, you're going to hear from some operational leaders, some subject matter experts, and industry professionals, all contributing to a wider conversation around standards, risk, leadership, and the future of aviation fire and rescue. If you have ever considered a career in aviation firefighting, which I definitely have, or you just want to learn more about the future of AFOA conferences, make sure you check out the link in the show notes below, and let's find out what this next episode's about.
Why am I standing up here in front of you, talking to you? I spent my career, 30 years and a few months, it's important a few months, in London Fire Brigade. I was 15 years on the trucks. I worked all around the northeast of London, and then with the LFB, climbed the slippery pole, made my way up to Deputy Assistant Commissioner or Area Manager in most other local authority services, before then retiring in 2019. But I had a wonderful career, had some really great experiences, but for me, being here this afternoon, I've had an insight into the world of aviation and airport firefighting, as well as a look around the country at other local authority fire services. It's been a real privilege, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. Craig.
Thank you, Peter. And why am I here? I spent over a decade in the fire and rescue service in local authority, and along that time, I was somewhat of an anorak and spent a lot of time in the virtual reality world as well. So the educational around using VR for command training, and other areas of life. So sort of to see one of the sad ones with technical experience and the operational experience is probably a slight understatement.
Thanks, mate. So we've got a couple of objectives. We won't stick rigidly to them, but hopefully we'll cover off most of these. For those areas that we don't cover, then please, you've got questions and answers at the end, or you can come and see us on the stand just out of the hall to the left in the left-hand room. We're going to talk a little bit about effective command. For those that know very little about effective command, what is effective command? We're going to talk a little bit about rescue firefighting service, the legislation, national operational guidance, how the two, in our opinion, if you like, dovetail and align. We're going to talk a little bit about, and it's not an open question, so we won't be passing the mic around, but a little bit about compliance, competence, qualification, and how do those three live in harmony. A little bit around the methodology then around incident command. So we'll talk to you about how we use effective command in over 30-something fire rescue services local authority around England. So out of a possible 45, we've got a good footprint and heat map about local authority fire services and where we use effective command. We'll talk a little bit about the hierarchy of command competency, live demonstration of the EC portal. It's live to a point, but because the internet connection we've tested it isn't fantastic, we might switch to showing you some slides of effective command, but that's just IT for you. And then finally, how we use the data, and then we'll do a summary and probably Q&A at the end of that. Who is Pete Critchell? Who is Craig Rayner? Who is effective command? Not being a person, obviously. It's a specialist tool. It's a behavioural marking tool, referred to as a framework. It covers all levels of incident command, levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. we use it across all of the local authority fire rescue services, and because it's a certified behavioural marking scheme, in our opinion, it allows us to develop competent, confident commanders. Confidence, we know, comes from competence. We can strengthen decision-making, certainly around the behaviours. So it's very much not about a tick box approach. It's very much not about compliance. It's very much about behaviours. Okay, we'll come on to a bit more about that. It can also be used to monitor real life incidents. So there is a report type within Effective Command that you could use as a monitoring/mentoring tool for people that you may be looking at that are aspiring commanders. Finally, you can analyse command trends. So what is the purpose of data if we do nothing with it?
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behaviour, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
So using Effective Command and the report tool within Effective Command, we can analyse data, and that can be analysed down to a granular level of detail. It could be about an individual, it could be about a station, an area, a region, and actually what we do is a national data crunch as well once a year, where we look at trends that are identified through all of the report types that come into Effective Command across that 12-month period. And we'll give you a couple of examples of those. Ultimately, it's about enhancing organisational learning. Okay, so yes, as an individual, we want to know where we are, don't we? As individual commanders, we want to know how good, how bad, how indifferent. Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses? That's important. Of equal importance is to know as an organisation. Organisations need to know where they stand, i.e., are we compliant? Have we got competent officers? Do we think we're going to be gripping the bar in some public inquiry whereby we're going to be hauled over the coals by some bright, shiny barrister because we might be compliant, but actually we didn't do much assessment? And we didn't do much in terms of proving competence. So we want to give organisations that, if you like, warm tummy feeling, yeah? So aviation command challenges, I've already set my stall out. I do not come from aviation background. My only badges that I collected was once going to Heathrow for, I think it was a lithium battery fire in one of the big Emirates aircraft. Wow, how you guys dealt with that, phenomenal. I learned an awful lot during my time in LFB, working with London City Airport, working with London Heathrow, on occasions going out as far as Stansted for Essex just to assist there with the Nilo. But basically, we are aware that you operate as commanders under absolute extreme pressure. I mean, time critical extreme pressure. The incidents that you may have to deal with, in our opinion, in our humble opinion, they can rapidly escalate from what can be something quite small in its infancy, but then rapidly develops and spreads, especially with things like the fire loading, the fuel. They may have a certain particular cargo on board. You've got people, you've got medical triage to deal with. You've got business as usual to deal with. My lesson from attending Heathrow was how quickly pressure was brought to bear on the airport fire service to get that airport back up and running again. How quickly it had to be operational again. So the business as usual, that's another pressure not associated with people that have to apply the media, have to apply the foam, have to get the tenders in the right position, a pressure on the commanders because they're the ones that are going to be getting it in the neck. How quickly can we get back up and running? Obviously, with business as usual comes that financial pressure. So that significant pressure I imagine you'll tell me, I don't need to tell you, every minute, every hour lost at one of our airports must amount to thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions quite quickly, I imagine. UK PLC gets affected if one of the major airports gets affected. We know too, from whether you're a local authority fire, whether you are aviation fire, whether you're one of the other private fire services, that hesitation absolutely increases risks. If we've got a risk-averse commander, if we've got someone not confident, someone not competent, someone who hasn't kept up their continuous professional development, it can introduce hesitation, and hesitation can increase the risk. Because as I've already said, you are under immense time and risk-critical pressures when you attend incidents in the aerodrome. But we also need commanders to be assertive, adaptable, and risk-aware. It's not good enough now to be a tick-box commander, someone who's just compliant. There's so many other behaviours and skills associated with being a competent, effective commander. So developing all-hazard commanders in the aviation environment. Again, I say, I'm not here, obviously, to speak as a subject matter expert on your field, in your sector, but I can give some experience of my sector. Thankfully, as a frequent flyer traveller, your environment generally is low frequency in terms of significant incident type, but wow, when they happen, massively high risk, as we've already gone through. So the low frequency, high risk, if you look at any of the studies around command, those are the ones that are going to keep you up at night. Those are the ones, when pager goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning, you look at it and you think, I haven't dealt with something like that for a couple of years at least. And I don't remember the last time I trained on that. I certainly haven't been assessed on that. It's those low frequency but very high risk incidents. Your commanders need to be all hazards. What do we mean by that? Well, all hazards is, as I've already alluded to, you're dealing with things like, obviously, attendance to the incident. You've got people, you've got cargoes, you've got fuels, you've got hazmats possibly, potentially, you've got BAU. So many hazards that your commanders are having to reconcile in a very, very short space of time. There's a public expectation, and I'm sure that ranges from the person in the terminal that thinks, why is my flight delayed? There's an expectation to get the gate open, let me get on my aircraft, and the public expectation actually that we're not going to be inconvenienced too much. So there's a big moral pressure on you. As well as the legal scrutiny and organisational accountability, of course, as I said earlier, we have examples, certainly in the local fire authority sector, of public inquiries, whether it's Grenfell, whether that's Manchester Arena, whether that's Lacanau. Public inquiries happen, and they happen for a very good reason. We want to make sure that we're developing commanders that have done everything within their power, compliant, competent, regularly trained, regularly assessed, so that when they're gripping the bar, giving their evidence about what they did in those first few minutes or first few minutes leading up to the 30 and the golden hour, that you're not going to be hauled over the coals about how you were to become a commander in charge of that tender for that particular incident. We are acutely aware now, the regulatory framework, as I would expect in an industry so risk critical as yours, there's regulation everywhere, okay? But obviously the compliance CAP 168, and we've got CAP 699, which is the competency framework. That's great for us when we've been doing our homework and research. It's really, really very comprehensive set of competencies for rescue firefighting services to have to comply with and have to make sure that their occupational standards meet what it says in 699. In the local authority arena, we've got the National Fire Service Doctrine. We refer to it as National Operational Guidance. I believe it may change to Operational Guidance, but nevertheless, we know it as NOG at the moment. So in the local authorities, you've got National Operational Guidance. You've also got professional qualification standards, and they are delivered through certified training providers, of which we are one, at all levels of incident command. So you've got qualifications within that make sure that we can adhere to what is regulatory within local authority, and we want to impress upon you what should be in the aviation sector as well. It's there for you to use. We want to explain to you how that happens. So aviation versus local authority FRS. Just very simplistically, if you look on the middle column, type of training, we know that you do courses on command. We're reliably informed you do courses across all of your other skill set, of which are many. You do revalidation. You do aviation-specific incident command system, or you use aviation-specific. If we just compare that to the right to local authority, in local authority, it's skills for justice levels 1, as you were, 3 through to 7, which gives them their competence. On the left, again, if we go down the middle column, certificate of competence, validity, typically 4 years, we understand. If you look across to the right, we use national recognised qualifications, and national operational guidance says once every 2 years, you should revalidate against your level of command. So it's the frequency is slightly more in national operational guidance, but nevertheless in aviation, every 4 years, you ought to have that sort of revalidation of certification to operate. Standards, we've said 168-699, ICAO. On the right, National Operational Guidance and Skills for Justice Awards. On the left, what's the purpose? Well, the purpose of the training, as we understand it, that you do is around demonstrating competence for aerodrome licensing. So we talk a little bit there about compliance. On the right, what it does for local authorities is its legal defensibility and national incident command structure standardisation. Across all of the local authority fire service, 45 in England, you've got Scotland, we've got Northern Ireland included, and then we've got the island of Ireland. You should be able to go to any area, any region, and the incident command system is consistent across all of those sectors. That's why we get standardisation, and that's how we get legal defensibility, because it's consistency and it's standard across the whole of the sector. So you might be sitting there asking, well, we understand that you're, as a sector, not mandated to follow NOG. It's not a legal requirement to follow national operational guidance. But let's just ask, is it something you should be looking at? Is it something you should be advocating to fall in line with? As I've said, NOG legally only applies to local fire authorities, fire rescue services, not to airports. Your CAP 168 and 699 already define the operational standards that airports must meet. So why does it matter then? Why does it matter to align with NOG? Or does it? Rhetorical question. We feel it matters because there are some areas that we've identified not necessarily covered to any great or lesser degree as compared to what national operational guidance. A couple of those areas are interoperability, also known as i.e. GESIP, because you attending incidents as commanders, you probably deal with as many multi-agency partners in a short space of time than any local authority fire service does. So you're speaking to air traffic control, you're speaking to airport operations, you're speaking to police, you're speaking to healthcare providers, ambulance, ground crews, so many agencies. Interoperability should be absolutely woven into what you do. And I'm sure, it's nodding heads around the room, you're going to say it is. We still feel, personal opinion, NOG doesn't necessarily align entirely yet. I think there's scope for work there, but it doesn't necessarily align yet. But the good news is, what we've seen is NOG does not conflict with anything in CAP 699. They're frameworks that exist in isolation, but they don't conflict. There's an awful lot in national operational guidance that applies to what you do in aviation aerodrome firefighting. It's just doing that sort of gap analysis to find out where the gaps are. What we feel a key takeaway from today is around effective command possibly being the vehicle you could bridge that gap with. So CAP 699 asks the question, does it not? Are we compliant? It's a compliant doctrine. Do we do this? Have we said that? Have we got this? Can we meet this time? It's very much a compliant. So NOG and GESIP, you'd ask yourself then, should we or are we aligned? So look at 699, look at National Operational Guidance, training needs analysis or gap analysis. Where are the gaps in what we're doing? Could we easily adopt National Operational Guidance within the aviation? The last question from that is, are we qualified? Skills for Justice Incident Command is a qualification. Unless someone's going to tell me differently, don't expect people to shout at me. Qualifications, maybe, is an area, perhaps, where aviation firefighting could look to, and we'll come on to why. We feel it's important not only to be compliant, but in order to be competent, there are qualifications attached to that, and we'll come on to a little bit of that. It was interesting listening to Mr. Milton's opening presentation this morning, where there was a similar theme running through that around compliance versus qualification versus revalidation. And I thought that seems to be a thread running through the day. Effective command, we think, will bridge that gap. So you've got your 699 will tell you whether you're compliant. If you were to start using NOG, which includes interoperability and GESIP, you could say you are now aligned. Skills for Justice Incident Command qualifications could be a solution to qualifications for your commanders. And then effective command, which bridges that gap, will then say, through revalidations and through initial assessments, are we competent? So how does it bridge the gap? Well, effective command could bridge the gap by providing the behavioural and decision-making layer, which is missing from CAP 669. It's also missing to a lesser or greater degree from 168, but you have got it in effective command. So straight away, you can tick that box. It creates a universal command language. So across all users of effective command, you've then started to establish that common command language, which I said exists in the local authority fire rescue services. It makes competence visible and measurable. Craig will come on to a little more around effective command and the detail of it, but effectively there are 8 sections, headings, ranging from information gathering all the way through to review. Underneath each of the headings, there are 9 assessment criteria. So 72 in total, let's say for an ICL level 4 commander. But it's all visible. It's captured. You have an assessor. You are assessed. That data is kept. And you can measure. You can identify trends. You can use it to influence training cycles, influence training interventions. You can use it to improve where it's needed, weaknesses, but also keep doing what you're doing really, really well. But it's there. It's visible and it's measurable.
I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
It supports multi-agency interoperability. There are a number of assessment criteria within effective command that relate directly to interoperability and working with our multi-agency partners. And we feel that it will enable alignment between 699, Skills for Justice qualifications, and NOG and GESIP. With all those things added up, we believe it promotes a consistent high quality of command behaviours. Okay? The more you use it, the more familiar you become with the tool, the more familiar you become with the behaviours that are required, as opposed to dare I say, just the compliant method of assessing, which is what I referred to earlier as the tick box method. So this is very much about behaviours. So compliant, competent, qualified, can we be all three? Absolutely we can. Compliant, okay, meeting a defined regulatory and organisational requirement. We all know how compliance works. Someone checks it, someone checks the checker. It's pretty much a, have we done this, have we got this, have we said that? Okay, so we can be compliant. And that's really good with your regulatory framework, as it is with the Fire and Rescue Services Act 2004. For us, we have to make sure, obviously, as local authority fire rescue services, we're compliant against a statutory piece of law. Qualification. You need people that are eligible to take the qual. There's some knowledge that you have to impart to get the qualification. But at the end of that, you could say you've met the qualification, you've got your ICL level 3 or 4 or 6 or 7, and you're now compliant with that qualification. Competence then is demonstrated through judgment, adaptation, and decision-making in context. So this is where the assessment should be done in a safe environment, in using scenarios that have the risk-critical factors built into them that enable you to really demonstrate your behaviours of command. And it needs to be in context. For you, the context being in aviation, okay? So I think we've answered that question. Effective commanders can be and should be compliant, qualified, and competent. And with effective command, you could achieve all three. We like to, if you like, not so much a mantra, but we like to say to our students, it's, for us, compliance builds confidence in a system. So you know trucks have got to be a certain size, in a certain place, get to a certain point at a certain time. So it builds confidence in a system, compliance generally, okay? The qualification builds confidence in the individual, because we've all in this room had to sit tests, exams, assessments, some really high, I'm sure, educational qualifications. But either way, if you get a qualification, it builds confidence, but it's not the end of it. Because then competence is then what you demonstrate and you deliver over time to give you that competence, okay? So you can definitely have compliance, you can have the qualification, you get the competence, and we think that effective commanders ought to have all three. So a little bit about the effective command methodology, if I may. It's a certified behavioural marking framework. It's certified by the University of Coventry and obviously Skills for Justice, because we're a certified training provider. It covers all technical and non-technical competencies. At the moment, it covers the competencies that can be found in WM7 and Emergency Fire Services Management 01 and 02, which are the National Occupational Standards for Local Authority Fire Services. But effective command with some adaptation would fit what you do in aviation if you choose to pursue that. It focuses on decision-making behaviours. As I said, we've come an awful long way from when I remember being assessed back in the day. I hate the phrase, but I keep using it. Back in the day, it was literally almost like a certificate of attendance. It was almost like you've turned up, you've shown that you can run a 4-pump incident. Great, see you again soon. There's no real structure, no feedback, no real behaviours exam in there. It was just, you're kind of safe, that'll be all right. What effective command does, it focuses on those behaviours. That's what we want to hone. That's what we want to drill down into. I've said what we're cross-mapped into at the moment. 699, we believe, if you was to look at effective command over the 72 competencies, you will recognise elements of 699 in there. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. There may be some gaps. We think interoperability and JESIP, but you will recognise lots of what your compliance document says within effective command. It provides evidence for practical competence within the awards qualifications. There's recorded templates that exist for control commanders through levels 1 through to 4. The toolkit is routinely used throughout the UK FRS. It's used for monitoring, it's used for training, it's used for formal training, it's used for monitoring of live incidents, and it's used under assessment. There are, I believe, something like 6 reporting types within effective command that can be used to assess an individual. Before I hand over to Craig very shortly, this model is based on Kolb's reflection learning. We've adapted it for effective command because we think it actually fits what we do as well. So starting on the top left-hand quadrant in the blue area, the effective command training cycle should start with the training. We need to train people to do the job, of course. So training is pretty much front and centre. But then, if we go around the circle, we need then a system in place where we can monitor. There is no point in doing an assessment and then not being looked at or doing CPD or being monitored or mentored for 2 years before your next assessment comes around. That's not fair on you. It's certainly not fair on the organisation if they're looking for that competence of their commanders. So there should be some system in place to monitor, whether that is live monitoring through training and exercise. I'd hopefully think it's not during live incidents. It's a bit more difficult to monitor. But nevertheless, there's a facility there to monitor. You should then have a system in place to assess. As I say, National Operational Guidance says once every 2 years as a minimum. Tyne and Wear Fire and Rescue Service as a great example. Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, they insist on their commanders being assessed annually because they don't think 2 years is soon enough. But National Operational Guidance says every 2 years you should be compliant against prove competence, as I said, against your level of command. And then finally, you need some kind of review process. So the review process is the feedback, the structured feedback, sitting down with that individual. Let's have a deep dive into exploring rationale. Why did you make that decision at that point? What information did you gather at that point? Why did you not think it was important with that information you had to think about anticipating what the next hour was going to look like? You want to give the individual the opportunity to give you their rationale for why they've made a particular decision. Okay, so it's not just we assess somebody, they walk off the fire ground, incident ground training area, and we don't give them the courtesy of sitting down with them and giving some kind of review. In all honesty, what we see still to this day quite a lot of is the train and assess. And then in some services, we see just assess. We go back to every 2 years, come back, we'll put you through the mill, and they're surprised when people are unsuccessful in their assessments because the individual hasn't perhaps taken some responsibility to do some training and CPD, but equally the organisation hasn't had the time or the inclination to give them some training. So they come back for an assessment after 2 years and sometimes not very successful. So ideally, the actual command training cycle ought to include all of those elements in it. If we get that, we close the loop. I'm going to hand over to Craig.
Thank you. Thank you. As Peter said, Effective Command as a toolkit is a behaviour marking form. We have certain report types. Now, these report types are designed in which, as you mark them, it's about putting decent data in, and it is where we, as commanders and individuals, organisations, can see our strengths, our weaknesses. Now, going back and sitting back down to Peter's day, weakness is always seen as we don't want to, you don't want to get slapped by a stick. So we always kind of shied around it. So the report types we're doing is we've got our training. So this is done when our colleagues, our students are physically doing their training, and it's about their own performance. So it's about them judging themselves of going, oh, actually, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. Next one along is our formal training. So that's training by from your qualified instructors coming in, doing a formal training day with individuals. In attendance, when individuals go to attendance, they can, again, self-reflect. It's, again, about their own performance. The data that's collected through this form here not only shows strengths and weaknesses within their command on of the incident they've actually attended, but more importantly, has there been any good or bad reflections that actually went with the incident with the new emerging technologies that are happening as well. We've got incident monitoring, so that could well be the governor is monitoring my expertise. They're stood along my shoulder watching my decision process, and they will mark me and go through that with my strengths and weaknesses. And the final one is our formal assessment. Now, we've got these 5 reports. These 5 reports allow you as organisations and for us to be able to delve down into whereabouts the trends are within those sort of particular areas of training. Through Effective Command, the training portal, this is one of the things, so part of the CPD we want and we advocate for people to do, certainly in fire and rescue services, we need to allocate command hours. It's all about experience. It's about building up confidence that the systems that we are applying, the systems that we're doing, our command decisions are at their best. So the training portal has got over 100 videos, all based around the National Operational Guidance scenarios. And it gives you the ability to go through any particular scenario that maybe you lack confidence, maybe you haven't been to one for a while. Myself and Peter and someone else were talking earlier. Hazmats in the job when I was there was probably one of those jobs that I hated because I didn't trust it because I couldn't see it. If it's chemical reaction, something was happening. So automatically you sort of go, and you wait for the governor to come over to go, I can help you. By doing these, this allows your commanders to refresh their knowledge. They're videos that help you and guide you through it with someone talking over it. So what is your thought process? What is your anticipation? And again, once the students have done this, they're putting this data in. It's really good because we can look at the data and sort of see whereabouts people are lapsing within the marking criteria.
We're working in collaboration with the Blue Light Show, a national conference and exhibition built around one thing. Blue Light services do better together than apart. I'm going to be there 1st and 2nd of July 2026 at the event, getting involved with those conversations and connecting with people who really care about doing the job better across the blue light sector. I'll see you there.
We've also got the assessment portal, which at the moment we've got 8 scenarios that are already built around aviation, one particularly being a tug fire, but we've got some domestic stuff as well. On the left-hand side shows you what the instructor would do, and on the right-hand side is what the student can see. So that's a mapping. Go to the next one. And that's what they turn up to. That is them on scene. Now, this is about them seeing a on-scene image and them talking through their methodology with us. Whilst that's happening, although they're not seeing their tactics, they're talking about what they are planning on doing. As assessors, we can run through an assessment portal, the assessment criteria. So as you can see here, as Peter said, there are 8 subjects to information gathering, understanding information, anticipation, decision-making, plan, communication, command, and review. Each one of those has 9 areas underneath it, which build up to 72 marking criteria. And you're probably sat there going, oh my God, that's a lot. That's overwhelming. And it's really not. It is on a sliding scale of a RAG system, 1 to 5. 5 being excellent, 1 being safety critical. At any one point, if you hit 2 safety critical points, if we go on here, you can see that it's gone red. That means that particular student or that student has failed that particular area. It's not failed the command assessment. It just means that they failed information gathering. So when this information is pumped into the system, as a service, as a department, as a watch, you can see that actually this individual might need some further education, further training on information gathering. So that can help dictate your training going forward. So you can start injecting more information and information that they need to do. You can see, as you see there, it's on a sliding scale, and every single time if you want to look, for example, that one there, collection of information, we're looking at turnout tickets, we're looking at en route information, additional messages, SSRIs. This is getting people to look at it and really delve into it. This is about finding the strengths and weaknesses for us, because no one's perfect. I'm trying to find the perfect commander, and I don't think they exist because things are changing all the time. Talking to someone earlier around lithium batteries, lithium cars are going more and more frequently on airports with tugs. I suppose I could ask and raise your hands if anyone's turned up to a tug fire that's a lithium battery and how we deal with them. One person. And it'd be interesting to talk to how you dealt with it. They're so infrequent, but when they do happen, they're difficult. And your professional judgment then has to come into place because it's not something we've found. All the data, if we just flick back, all the data is collected, as Peter said, across the UK. This data then is fed into our system, which means that we can, when we're doing presentations, Catherine comes over, we develop information, we can really tailor about seeing where the country's going in terms of what is lapsed and what is lacking. Effective command is all about collecting and generating data.
Thanks, Craig. See, I left the techie bit to Craig. See where my skills lie. Give you a little bit of an example of what Craig, to support what Craig was just saying there. The raw analysis, raw data, we have a total bottom right-hand corner there currently. We're sitting at 62,362 different reports within effective command collected since 2017. Obviously, the incident command levels on the far left-hand column, levels 1, 2, 3 and 4 being strategic. You're going to get a lot more reports at level 1 because across the country there are a lot more level 1 commanders, so it stands to reason. But 62,000 gives us somewhere in the region of 2.2 million individual data points. That's the important part, 2.2 million individual data points that we can start to look at trends. Data on its own is okay, but it's not much use, is it? Yeah, we can all collect data. I'm sure within your jobs, within your roles, you collect lots of data, but it's about what we do with it, okay? We need to turn it into information. So what do? We start to contextualize that data. When we start to contextualize the data, we can actually get some good information from what we've observed and what we've seen. We then want to turn that into knowledge. To turn it into knowledge, we want to start to get some groupings of that information. So we start to understand, are we looking at information gathering as a weakness? Are we looking at anticipation? Is it decision making that's a weakness? So we want to turn... Is that me?
That's you.
Thank you. We want to turn that information into knowledge. With knowledge, we can do so much more with, because then we get the insight and the wisdom. The wisdom comes from repetition. The wisdom comes from experience. Okay? So we've had the raw data, we've turned it into information, we've now turned that into knowledge where we can start to, if you like, target hard and down on areas where we've got some weaknesses, but exemplify where we've got some strengths. And then with wisdom, we can introduce that into our training cycles, our training interventions, and we can start to see an improvement in the areas where before they may have been a weakness. So that's what we do. That's what we try and do with the data. We look for strengths and weaknesses regardless of the outcome of the report. You might think if someone passes and someone's done a really good report, that's it, job done. Well, no, because even in a really, really good example of an assessment, there will still be some learning in there. There will still be some weaknesses. So it's important that we look at the strengths and the weaknesses. Just a couple of examples to emphasise and underpin the points that Craig made. What you're looking at there is the abbreviations, INF, information gathering, planning, command, review, decision making. On the left are the strengths. So there's some examples across incident command level 1 reports that we've got of strengths. Collection of initial information, really, really good. Okay. Appropriate incident objective set early, really good. Clear and concise under command, really good. And then finally, progress against the objectives and decisions are timely. But even in this report, as well as the strengths, we highlighted and identified some weaknesses. Okay. And if you look at information number 1 and information number 9, that's the 9 assessment criteria we spoke about, 1 to 9. So information number 1 criteria says, were they strong at collection initial information? Yeah, generally, we'd have what looks good. As we said, tip sheets, COSH, hazard information, mobilising information. Information gathering was quite good. But then you go across to a weakness in the same category of information gathering. The communication of the incident situation to other responders via fire control using methane was poor. So this is the JESIP and interoperability piece. Okay, so you can see within a really good, this example was actually a good pass. You've got strengths and you've got weaknesses. But it's important that you pay due attention to both areas, because we can glean a lot from weaknesses, of course, because they're opportunities, but we can also glean a lot from the strengths and what we're doing really, really well. So what we do is we look at themes, and this is basically themes over the last 12 months. Key themes repeating at each command level, whether you're a level 1 or a level 4, at each command level. Risk assessment, application of JESIP, decision logging. Who'd have thought when you think about Manchester Rayner, when you think about Grenfell, about decision logging. Why are we still in the local authority fire rescue services not where we need to be with decision logging? Information recording. It's great making decisions, and absolutely we should be making decisions. Do we capture the risk critical ones? Do we capture the decisions that actually I might be asked to recall in some public inquiry later on down the line? What we're seeing there is obviously we could be better. Broader incident considerations and impacts, we talk about there, sort of road closures, weather that might be incoming that might affect a protracted incident. So for me, you can see in that, even in a really good assessment, there are strengths and weaknesses that we need to pay due attention to. So we define competent is having the appropriate knowledge, the appropriate skills and experience and training to perform a role safely and effectively, and you can apply all these consistently in an operational environment. Competence, as I think we've said in the last 40 minutes or so, is the keystone that binds our training, our qualifications and our development into a unified professional system. What does good look like? Effective command competence data makes command capability visible. We said that, okay? It makes behaviours visible in a way that qualifications don't. You can sit and do a test, do an exam, you can get knowledge imparted into you, and you could probably answer a test at the end of it. Doesn't necessarily make it visible about the behaviours that we're looking for in an assessment, okay? So qualifications is one thing, but what we actually want to look at is the competence side. The data provides evidence of how command is exercised, not how it is intended. So it's not tick box. You're actually watching someone do that assessment. It's observational. You're speaking to them. Professional discussions we heard about this morning. Structured debriefs. Can we use effective command data to determine what incident commander competence looks like? Absolutely we can. We've given you examples. It identifies strengths. It identifies weaknesses. You could look across all of your incident command level 1s and start to identify trends. Your level 2s identify trends. So you can use the data to determine what a good competence looks like in an incident commander. Are there any particular criteria that influence competence more than others? No. Each of the 72 competencies are equally weighted. Okay, so there isn't one that's weighted more than another, not one area that's more important than the other. Because what we look for in commanders is safe, effective, assertive, is that holistic commander. Okay, we're not looking for someone who's very, very good at gathering information, not so good at making a decision, not so good at putting a plan together. Okay, you need to be good across all areas. What does good command look like? Well, I think we've covered this. It distinguishes qualification from competence. It identifies what good command actually looks like under pressure. Because when you're being assessed in a safe training environment, you are still under some element of pressure. It can inform national best practice. That's national operational learning and joint organisational learning under the JESIP doctrine. And it supports shared learning across emergency response domains. So again, the joint organisational learning is shared across police, fire and ambulance across the UK. So the data that we can produce from effective command can help inform our emergency services partners as well. Going to almost there, hierarchy of command competence. So do we agree that that looks pretty much where we want to be as commanders? Safe, effective, assertive in the middle there. Yeah, we agree that's probably about it. But actually there is still a hierarchy in that. And there's a reason that safe is at the bottom. Safe is the foundation. That's the foundation standard. We all, when you go to incidents, need to make sure that we go home safely. All of our crews go home safely. Anybody that's had any involvement with us at the incident goes home safely. So safety is absolutely critical. Okay, so safe, bare minimum. Risks identified, assessed, controlled. Decisions defensible and proportionate. Legal and procedural boundaries are respected. We accept that if command is not safe, then you can't be competent, okay? One of the areas you will fail an assessment for, risk critical, is safety, quite obviously. Then we go into the operational competence area, which is about being assertive. So if we get assertive commanders, clear intent and priorities, they've got a good direction of where they want to go. Timely decision making, there's no decision lag, okay? They're not risk averse. They make the timely decisions proportionate to the incident they're dealing with. Appropriate exercise of authority. We're not working outside of policy, outside of compliance, outside of guidance. It's appropriate, exercising the authority that we've got. Willingness to invite and manage challenge. We need to be self-aware. We know that as commanders. Self-aware meaning sometimes you have to turn around on the command unit or with your command team and say, have I missed anything? Because we're only human. So willingness to invite and manage challenge. If you want gold standard competence, you add the effective part. You build on safe, assertive, and then you get to effective. All of the outcomes are achieved. All of your objectives and priorities are achieved. Decisions are reviewed. They're adapted. Review is a massive part of command. If we don't review progress, how do we know if we're actually making an impact on what we're doing? All the resources that we've had attend and resources we might have asked to attend are all optimised to the best effect. And all of our command teams and partners all function in that system. So there's no working in silos. So you can see if we add safe, we add assertive, we have effective, then we get that hierarchy of command competence. Safe command is essential but not always sufficient. At complex incidents, safety without professional judgment and assertiveness can still lead to poor outcomes. What do I mean by that? Safe is the baseline. Safe is the bare minimum we expect from commanders, okay? And if it's not safe, you ain't going to achieve competence. But what we would say is, keeps doubling up on that, professional judgment plays a part here as well, okay? We can sometimes be guilty of being hamstrung by regulatory frameworks, hamstrung by codes of practice and what we should and shouldn't do. Sometimes we need to encourage thinking commanders, encourage commanders to have some professional judgment on what they're dealing with. Okay, it's not used as you were. It's used at every incident, just exceptional ones, which used to be the belief. There are rare situations when what you want to do doesn't quite fit in with what you've been trained and what you've been taught to do, which is where we want thinking commanders. If we just had compliant commanders, they wouldn't be able to operate outside of compliance, national operational guidance, regulatory frameworks. We need to create, through behaviours, thinking commanders that can use their professional experience and judgment to get over some of the problems and issues you get faced with. Okay? Just to finish that, the judgment does involve interpreting risk, not avoiding it. Because if we wanted to be really safe, we'd do nothing. Don't let anyone go near the hot stuff. Don't put any of your crews in danger. But that's not going to solve the incident, so we can't actually have that base level of just safe. We need to be able to put in place some measures, control measures and assessments to make sure that we can go forward safely. Okay. So where do we think, just to summarise, application of effective command in the airport fire and rescue services, we know and we've agreed, we certainly have acknowledged, and this yesterday and today has been a real eye-opener, the unique challenges faced by your commanders when they turn out to incidents. But we believe that effective command data can strengthen the all-hazard preparedness of your commanders. You can use it to identify patterns of weakness specific to your environment that would be unique to me, most certainly. You can target training using high-influence criteria. So where we identify those weaknesses, you can start to adapt your training to try to strengthen what was a weakness. Finally, you can use the trend analysis to audit organisational preparedness. That's that warm tummy feeling that the senior leadership teams need when they're looking at the competence of their commanders. So we believe that if you was to consider where does your ask, again, Mr. Milton talked a lot about reflect, self-reflection. He's right in that in your organisations now sitting there, think, how many of those do I hit? How many does our organisation hit? Train, monitor, assess, review. There are practical implementation steps that you can take to achieve competence. We believe we've described some of those this afternoon. Simulation program aligned to assertive, effective behaviours. Craig demonstrated that on the assessment portal, we're up to 9 assessments now. That's work in progress in terms of assessment portal being able to assess within your own risks. But there's 100 in the training portal you can use for training. Live incident mentoring using EC monitoring forms. We've spoken about the report forms that you can use, the different types, and you can use those for live incident mentoring. You can target command boosters for low scoring areas. This is aligned to weaknesses, and you would try to encourage through your scenarios and through your structured debriefs how someone can improve in those weak areas to then become strong in those areas. You can integrate JESIP earlier and more frequently. It's a common weakness in the local authority FRS, as we've already said, even though it's been on the street since 2007, if memory serves. You can use the data to inform any safe operating procedures, SOG changes. You can develop command hours in a framework. As Craig alluded to, there are set command hours that each organisation sets for themselves that they have to achieve each year. So as a commander, and that can range anywhere from 4 hours to 20 hours, depending where you are in the country. But as a commander, you have to demonstrate that you've hit a certain amount of hours set by your organisation with which to exercise incident command, whether that's in a training environment, live monitoring, mentoring, or whether that's on an assessment. What it does ultimately is it embeds organisational learning right into the bedrock of your organisation. We know, we agree, we accept, and we are absolutely in awe of airport firefighters because they have to be all hazard commanders. They're not just fireground specialists, if you like, in the local FRS. You have to be specialists in a very, very hazardous situation. Effective command trend data reveals exactly which behaviours create high performance command. And using the data-driven training cycles, it strengthens organisational assurance, incident resilience, and public trust. So just a final thought I can leave you with, if I may. Command failure is rare, thankfully. However, command erosion is quite common. Skills fade. Lack of naturally occurring opportunities. Lack of CPT or training that might be afforded you. The qualification is not the problem that's going to solve this. That's not the silver bullet. It's the system design and the timing of commanders to do their revalidations, make sure they remain competent. That is the real issue, okay? Because command doesn't usually fail suddenly. It erodes over time. And it's just through lack of exposure, lack of training, lack of assessment. And then suddenly the bells go down and you're found wanted.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters Podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.